This is my favourite walk at this time of year. It never fails to delight the senses. And just a little bit about the Morrit family of Rokeby Hall, just to start us off. Well, this is the little Greta, early May 2022. And over there is Greta Bridge, where the old Roman road, the street, which became the A66, went across. This is what it looks like now. And this is what it looked like when John Lee Scotchman painted it about 1805. It's a lovely bridge. And there is John Lee Scotchman's view of Greta Bridge. You can see the Morrit arms there. It looks nothing like that now. And trees everywhere. There's a view almost of the complete arch, just as the sun comes out. On the other side of the arch, you'll see the cars whizzing past on the new A66. When I say new, it's probably 50 years old. That lovely balustrade it's got. I think it was built by the Morrit family of Rokeby Estate. In the middle of the bridge, on the top of the arch, it says Yorkshire North Riding. North Riding doesn't exist now. And this lump of Yorkshire was ceded to Durham, County Durham, at some time during a boundary reorganisation. The border used to be the River Tees, which is downstream of here. So all that has changed. This is Rokeby Hall, the front of Rokeby Hall, home of the Morrit family. This is one of the gates into Rokeby Park. But the estate has since been sliced in two by the A66, which you can hear rumbling past in front of me. And the house was built by a fellow called Sir Thomas Robinson between 1725 and 1730. And he was the governor of Barbados. Only slavery comes into it somewhere. In 1765 it was sold to pay off some debts, and it was sold to a fellow called J.S. Morrit in 1769, and it's been in the family ever since. It was his son who bought Velasquez painting, The Toilet of Venus. It became known as the Rokeby Venus. It's a sort of reclining nude with her back to you. A lovely shapely backside. And he hung it on the wall of the salon, and it was high enough so that ladies could avert their eyes when they came in, but gentlemen could have a sneaky view of it. And that is Velasquez, The Toilet of Venus, which was sold by the Morrit family to the National Gallery in 1906. It was considered very lewd in its time. The copy was done by a fellow called W.A. Menzies, which still hangs in the house. And it became famous because it was regarded as sort of pornographic. by the most strident women of the time, and one of the suffragettes set about it with a machete. did a lot of damage to it. They replaced the roof of the building and did some other modifications to it in 1986, which was subsidised by the public purse, and as a consequence it's open to the public during the summer months. And you can check their website. It looks very nice to go inside. I've never actually been, but I must make the effort to go. Artists such as Turner, Joseph Turner and John Cotman visited the place, as did Sir Walter Scott. And this is the Morrit Arms. Used to be a famous coaching stop in its day on the A66, the old Roman road. And Dickens, Charles Dickens, stayed here for a night somewhere in this neck of the woods on his way to do the Boys' Hall when he was writing about northern schools. I think it was in Nicholas Nickleby. And the back bar of this pub is called the Dickens Bar. It's worth going in. A chap called Gilby, a well-known artist, was a friend of the landlord, and he did lots of caricatures of Dickens' characters. He used the faces of local people in the painting. Some of them weren't terribly impressed by his impression of them. Nevertheless, they're nice to see. And there you can see a sample of one of the paintings which you see inside. And it's now 20 to 12. It's overcast but bright, but it promises to get out a little more later on in the afternoon, sometime around about 3 o'clock. So to start the walk, you just park here near the Morrit Arms, which is the hotel up there. So this is the start of the walk. It's 11:45. Just go over the wall and down these steps. When you come into the field, on top of this rise here is a Roman fort, or the outlines of a Roman fort, which I've never actually been to have a look at. This is probably a good time to do it. There isn't a lot to see, not unexpectedly. There's a sort of double ditch. At this end, a raised portion here, and the fort is on this flat field here. You see the Morrit Arms in the background there. There's probably guarding a ford over the river Greta at this point. All of this land will have been heavily wooded and very marshy. And Roman legions coming up what is now the A1, I think it was Ermine Street, on their way from France, sunny France, to the bleak northern boundary of the Roman Empire, Hadrian's Wall. I bet they look forward to that posting. Marauding Scots and freezing cold winters and miserable summers. And there you get a better view of these ramparts and ditches. They're quite high even now. They're a lot higher in its day, probably with a wooden palisade fence all the way around it. Well, after a gentle climb up the away from the river, it's relatively flat easy going. Along here. Well, I've been going about a quarter of an hour. Come to this little stile and little dog gate. As I walk along the side of the wood here, again level ground, fields of mile after mile of oilseed rape. I mean, it's very pretty in a sort of garish sort of way. I mean, I listen to people like David Attenborough and that young Swedish girl and others rabbiting on about climate change and how felling of the rainforest and planting palm oil plantations is a bad thing. Well, when I look round here, anywhere in England, I see absolutely no natural forest at all. We cleared ours off about 1,000 years ago, and in order to grow crops like this, I asked myself, what's the difference? Not only is there the smell of the oilseed rape blowing in my face, and a dreadful whiff of hypocrisy. And of course, were it not for climate change, none of this would be here. There was none of this when I was a kid in the 60s, 50s and 60s. Ditto, there was no corn on the cob, no maize, which you also see acres of. One day perhaps it'll all be acres of solar panels, which I see gradually taking over the countryside as you travel by train down to London. And I notice there's one for a 200-acre solar panel site up here somewhere. Well, a few more minutes, this flat top, we come to another stile where it drops away quite steeply. And down there on the fence is another stile. It doesn't have any signpost for it at all, but it's the footpath that leads to the Scotchman stone. So just stop down from that stile to this stile over the wire, which leads to the Scotchman stone. And there it is, just as the sun's come out. Unfortunately, you can't see the full stone because of these trees jammed up against it. But this was also painted by John Lee Cottam about the same time as Greta Bridge, 1805 to 1808. He did quite a lot of paintings in the River Greta and its environment. This is John Lee Cottam's painting of the Scotchman stone. I know we need to fathom out why it's called the Scotchman stone. There doesn't seem to be any information on it anywhere. And this little map shows you how to get the Scotchman stone. You come along this path here from Greta, and then you have to double back along here to the Scotchman stone. It's not very far, and I can see absolutely no evidence of that at all. I suspect you might have to approach it from this side to find out what happens down here. It's a great mass of jumbled boulders. This is the downstream side of it. Lovely sound, running water. It's just looking downstream. Now at this point, footpath does in fact cross the river. So if you decide this is as far as you want to go, you could carefully make your way across the boulders to the other side. I've never actually seen anybody going across the river. And you have to climb that steep bank on the other side up to the farmhouse. So, but as I say, people come to see the Scotchman stone and then just go back up onto the footpath I've just left. I can't see any evidence of a footpath on that side. And even when the river's as low as this, you have to get your feet wet. And you have to be very careful clambering over these stones when they're damp. They're very slippy, some of them. These little pile of stones. You see them all over the world. What is it that makes people make little piles of stones like that? Lots of initials carved on the top. JW, TW. Must have taken them ages to do these. You can tell by looking at the W. It's the old-fashioned W. Obviously done a long time ago. And that's looking upstream from the top of the stone. See those pavement of rocks there, almost as if they've been laid by man. See that deep pool and away downstream. It's a good time to come this time of year because there's very little foliage on the trees, so you get much better views of the river. Well, I'll just be on my way up this inclined footpath back to the stile where we came in. Yeah. And this little flower which you find in old damp woodland, wood sorrel, and its clover-shaped leaves. Yeah, it tastes sour, quite refreshing in fact. Chew. Delicate little thing. As we continue along the path, a few more yards of the place is ablaze with gorse. It's everywhere. That whiff of coconuts you get. They're just wonderful. You'd think it wouldn't fit into the environment, like something artificial, this spiky thing. But it is impressive. And we come to this finger post. Footpath to Greta Bridge, that's one I've just come across. Footpath to Brignal Mill, that's one I'm going to take. And the other one leads up to the new Brignall village. And this road, this little footpath, is known to locals as the old Coffin Road. Because down in the middle of this field, you can see a compound, a wall round it, a little ruin in the middle. And it's the remains of St Mary's Church. And down here there was a village, old Brignall. It disappeared hundreds of years ago. Nobody really knows why. I mean, it had a population of over 100 at one time. And in 1200s it was given permission to have a market. I mean, there's been all sorts of speculation about it. Was it the plague? Who knows? I mean, I suspect it was quite simply a sort of natural depopulation. I mean, down in these valleys the land was very swampy, liable to flooding. In the winter time you didn't get much sun. They were a frost pocket. I suspect as people moved out, nobody else moved in, and the houses, which won't have been very substantial, probably not made of stone, will quite simply have fallen to bits and disappeared, and what stone there was they probably took with them. Old St Mary's. On the River Greta at Brignall. There's huge lime trees behind it. Their roots reinforcing the bank when it drops quite steeply into the river. And this is a painting that Turner made, that romantic painter. He was a friend of the Morritt family. He came up and he painted quite a lot. Painted the Meeting of the Waters, which is quite famous. And he also painted a view which included the old St Mary's Church when it was complete. I think he completed it in 1812. I think it was to go with Sir Walter Scott's poem, Rokeby. This is an engraving from Turner's painting of St Mary's Church, Brignall. He painted it in 1822 in that romantic style. I mean, it looks nothing like that. But what's interesting is, although the church is there, there is no village there. So it's long gone before that, before 1822. This is another old engraving of the church. There was no date with it. You can see what a very simple structure it was. Well, some little stepping stones over into what was the graveyard. And on this side of the stile you get the lovely crosswort, sort of lime green, but growing on the wall is this lovely little purple flower called ivy-leaved toadflax. You'll never really notice it's a lime lover. It likes growing on the lime in between the stones. It's very common. So if you come in summertime, this place can be an absolute wilderness. As you can see by the stalks of last year's plants. Although the village disappeared a long, long time ago, the church was used until 1833-34, when they decided to build a new church up at where Brignall ended up, sort of on the valley side, higher up. They dismantled this church, or most of it, and took the dressed stone up to use in the new church. I mean, dressed stone was valuable stuff. Didn't want to waste it. So this is all that remains of it. St Mary's, the old St Mary's at Brignall. The new church is also called St Mary's. So you can see it's just a single nave. I think this thing is called a holy water stoop. Yes. Here is a relic of its Roman Catholic past. When you dip your hand in the holy water. And of course all that finished with Henry VIII's dissolution of the monasteries, and this was part and parcel of it. So in about 1539, when the church became part of the state, this would theoretically have become redundant. I suspect old habits died hard, and for many years afterwards, even though it was Church of England, I suspect people, particularly the elderly, I suspect they dipped their hands in the holy water when they came in. And this chap behind the railings was probably one of the very last to be buried here. He was buried in 1852, 9 years after the new church opened up higher up the valley. Sir Robert Errington. He's probably been a churchgoer here all his life, except for the last 8 or 9 years when the place was closed and dismantled. The stone is very difficult to read because of this white lichen which is everywhere. Somewhere on that wall over there is the shaft of a cross built into the wall with a intertwined cable carving on it. I've looked everywhere up and down there and I can't see it. Someone will point me in the right direction. And growing in the churchyard are a lovely patch of primroses. So, which we call milkmaid. Well, I've been here for nearly an hour, pottering about, trying to decipher these stones. I don't doubt that some organisation, some society will have deciphered all these stones at some time. Probably find it all on the internet. Well, it's now 1:20 and just make our way across this short stretch of field into the woodland, which takes us all the way up to Brignal Mill. Yeah, interesting to have a look at these lichens. They don't look like living things at all. They're bird droppings. But they are alive, gradually getting bigger and bigger. Behind the church, Greta. This is called a church pool. And on the other side there, it's called Parson's Island. Although it isn't an island, in fact. Well, one last look at the church before I move into the woodland. As I came across the field here, I noticed these white fungi. Now I think they are known as St. George's mushrooms, and they are in fact edible. But before I eat them, I'll check their identity when I get home. Well, it's been easy going so far, but as you walk along this woodland footpath, there are no inclines as such, or very few, but in the wet the terrain can be quite rough and muddy. Some steps down there, I suspect for fishermen. It does have a good head of wild brown trout, nothing very big. I think he caught one weighing a pound. I would think that was a good fish. There's an interesting little yellow flower there. It's obviously some kind of buttercup. The petals seem to have been lost. It's more delicate than the usual buttercup. This open area, this great mass of sweet cecily. Very distinct smell and taste of aniseed. You can in fact use it in salads, but I can't say it's an aniseed flavoured salad. It tempts me. Well, the footpath meanders along the bank here. Just these huge fir trees of some description. The river bubbling along the side. Oh, I've just come across this. It's new. I don't know what it's for, but venture down and have a look. It's a little bit incongruous, not what I expect here. Built on scaffolding poles. It looks down on this glide, this flat glide. The river's really low, as I say, at the moment. It's not going to rain for weeks, although it's just beginning to spit with rain now. You can see it on the surface. Like little, the sun shines on it, like little flashing diamonds here. And just round the corner, there's another one. Which is obviously not for looking into the river. I think they're for shooting parties. Well, just coming to the end of this piece of woodland. 10 to 2. Out into this rough pasture. Well, I've come across the footpath along the field, but you can, in fact, if you want to walk along the river, which you can see down there where that gorse is, and then make your way back up to this this stile in the corner, cross that, and there's another stile opposite. Well, short, cross this little pasture to this next stile into the woodland. There's obviously a little hole there for dogs, but the local sheep like it. There's something about sheep. If they were in this woodland, they'd want to be in this pasture. But because they're in this pasture, they want to be in this woodland. Of course, they've left all that wool there, which is absolutely ideal for birds making their nests at this time of year. A huge ash tree come down. Take the top off that one there as well. Probably the result of ash dieback. It's a shame. "50 years or more ago, this valley was heaving with elm trees. Wonderful. Thousands of them. And then we got Dutch elm disease, and now we just have sort of small saplings which are very quickly infected with it. And now it's this ash dieback. There are lots and lots of ash trees in this valley, big ash trees. And they will go the same way as the elm. It'll take quite a number of years to recover. Here you can see one of these young elms. And all its flowers, these very late round flowers. But they never mature. They always end up getting Dutch elm disease. Maybe somewhere there'll be one or two which are immune to it, and a new generation of elm trees can be propagated from them. But I haven't seen any sign of that anywhere. Well, up till now the footpath has been quite straightforward. As you go along this steep bank side, what are known as the Brignal banks, it can be quite tricky, particularly in wet weather. Unfortunately today we haven't had any rain for a long time and it's quite dry. But when it's wet and muddy, it's best to take it steadily. See here where this spring is coming down the hillside. these sort of stepping stones strewn along there. They're interesting springs, these. There are lots of minerals in them, which come out of solution, and they're collecting this moss. They form these great big clumps. Bright green mossy clumps. I think they're called kilobite springs, and they're very, very common in these valleys. You can see the minerals there. Not hard. Here's a better example of this, one of these springs. As the deposits build up of the moss collapses, falls down. So this whole piece here is not stable enough to support any other plant. Another little plant. To this environment. It's like some kind of liverwort. Well, another new development, I suspect part of the other development. A staircase. And it doesn't lead to anything except this sort of open clearing. Some great big rocks. Here's another one. I suspect that's what they're for. Controlling deer. They do tremendous damage. I can remember when this woodland was planted up. Yeah, you can see where all these trees haven't made it. You can see what they should have looks like. 20 feet tall by now. They just get their tops chewed off by deer. They're essentially raw deer. I haven't seen any today. Normally you see them if you're quiet. Interesting piece of stone. Like fossilised ripples on sand. I suspect that's probably what it was. And probably what it is. Here, growing along the footpath, cuckoo point, and its rather strange flower, pollinated by flies. It hasn't opened up yet, and 3 of them there, still closed. Green veined butterfly on the garlic. Just going across the path, there's a fallen tree which you have to duck under. It's open for us. Oh, lovely. See if I can get close to it. Well, as we move towards Brignal Mill, of this little outcrop of rock, see the shale at the base, the soft shale. There's this overhanging sandstone. And at the end of it is a cave. the roof of which is supported by these sort of pillars of rock. But looking at the size of those pillars which are propped up, it looks decidedly unsafe. And that's as far as it goes, that far corner there. But these are quite substantial slabs. Well, I suppose they've been holding these. I mean, it's 30 years since I first came, and it's not 40, and it was here then. And it was obviously here more than 200 years ago. The famous point, Sir Walter Scott, he was a friend of the Morrits of Rokeby Park, and visited often. And he lived at a house called Abbotsford House, which he was having extended. He'd written a poem called Lady of the Lake, which had made him quite a small fortune to do up this house. But he wanted to extend it, and in fact they were extending it, but he didn't have enough money to pay the builders. So he had to write another poem. It took him ages. But in 1813 he wrote a poem called Rokeby, and it's a very long poem. But this verse is probably well known to people around here, if not further afield, in which he says, "O Brignal banks are wild and fair, and Greta woods are green, and you may gather garlands there, would grace a summer queen." Oh, sounds all very romantic. But the poem itself, the rest of it, is based in the English Civil War just after Marston Moor, when the Royalists and Roundheads met. And it's basically about murder, treachery, lust, stealing. It's trying to find the Rokeby fortune. I think that's what it's about. But also in the poem is a mention of this cave. And this is where Bertram Wycliffe met a chap called Guy Denzel. They were sort of in it together, conspirators, trying to find this fortune. Anyway, let's move on to Brignal Mill. It's now 3:15. Too busy chasing butterflies and wandering around ruined churches. It took me 3.5 hours to get here. Normally it would take you about an hour and a half, if that. I'm trying to photograph orange-tipped butterflies. I don't think they land these, but orange tips. I think they just fly about all the time. Oh, lovely sound as the river runs over these stones. I call that moss green and those liverworts. And these huge fir trees behind, sheltered in this deep valley. When you're reaching the end of this woodland, the sort of last quarter of a mile after the cave, it rises steadily away from the river up this incline until you meet the lane. I think it's called Moorhouse Lane, which leads down to the mill. So at the top of the incline, this little gate we go through here into an open pasture. Might just come along the wood edge there. I'm now on the lane leading down to Brignal Mill. And now we're on the top, of course. It's a bit more windy where it's down in the valley. You don't get any wind at all. And a bench carved with a pair of pheasants, cock pheasants. Sit and rest your weary feet. That's rather good. Well, I have arrived at Brignal Mill. It's one of 4 mills, water mills, that were on the Greta. It's now a luxury holiday let, and the public footpath goes through this gate, across there to the house, round through that other gate. But they've now got a permissive path. And this is taken from the Durham Designated Rights of Way 2022. You can see there a little dotty line which crosses across in front of the mill and goes right past the windows. Whereas now you come around this permitted footpath round here. But there's no reason why you shouldn't walk across there. It is a public right of way. We'll use the permissive path which goes round the side of the garden. It goes down and across the old mill race. See there where the water emerged, having turned the wheel, and went way down there to rejoin the River Greta. They still draw water from the river, and they use it to turn a turbine, which provides everything they need in the winter time and produces a surplus in the summer, which they flock to the electricity company. And when they weren't using the wheel, the water was diverted by sluice gates down this race, where it joined the river, which you can see there. This was obviously the mill pound, these purple flowers are. And there you can see a rear view of Brignal Mill as it is now. That lovely magnolia in the garden. It's a really peaceful place. The mill does retain some of the old stones which came from France. And some of the mechanism is retained for sort of decorative purposes. And here's a view of the rear of Brignal Mill as it is today. Again, it also provides luxury holiday accommodation. And this is Brignal Mill as was, from a postcard. Nice reflections of the mill in the water there, in the mill pound. Interesting to note there, it's an old smuggling place. Now we just make our way up to this footbridge over the River Greta. This is the relatively new footbridge. Relative being the word, it's been in quite a long time now. Takes us over to the other side of the River Greta. We turn left and make our way back along the opposite bank. Just looking upstream from the bridge. And it says the public footpath goes slightly to the right here. That takes you back up onto the road. But there is a public footpath on the left hand side going along the river bank, and it's quite difficult. But we'll have a look at it when we get there. It's the end view of the mill. I suppose you come down that grassy bit. If you wanted to swim, you could splodge about in the river there. When it's in flood, you can't. It would be almost up to that door, I would imagine. Well, back on the main track. I thought it had disappeared. But, it's quite straightforward. The banks of these valleys are very unstable. You get, every now and then you get a bit of landslip and the footpath gets washed away and you get these sort of awkward little bits. There's one of the little side becks that comes in. We can bridge across it. So you're able to splodge through them. At this point you get two choices. Take a shortened route along there, or I'm going to go up here to Scargill Farm, Scargill Castle, and then across the moor. And we come to this gate, which takes us out into this open pasture. Just come through another gate, and in front of me is what is called Scargill Castle. It isn't actually a castle at all. It's the gatehouse to a Tudor manor which once stood behind it. When I first went in there, it was an absolute ruin. It had no floors and no roof. Now it's a very nice holiday let on 3 floors. Anyway, this is what it looked like when I first went in. This is Scargill Castle, which I first visited in 1998. I was given permission to go and have a look in. And this was the ground floor, where everything had just collapsed in. Rubbish strewn everywhere. Somebody had been using it to burn a lot of rubbish. And a terrible mess. This was the middle floor. There were 3 floors. This was the middle one. You went up a little spirally stone staircase to get to it. But the fireplace was still there with the grate, but everything else was just rotten. You couldn't walk onto the floor. You were going straight through. And this is the middle floor as it is, I assume, today. The castle having been completely renovated to provide luxury holiday accommodation. And they have a website if you want to know more about it. You can go on the website and have a look. You can see there from this that during the excavations that Scargill Castle wasn't the castle at all. It was a gatehouse. So you drove right through into the courtyard of some bigger house, some manor house behind, of which there is very little evidence. And that bit there is now the dining room of the luxury accommodation. Years ago, during the miners' strike, which was led by the leader of the union, Arthur Scargill, there was talk that he'd bought this place. It's a sort of getaway, which I imagine caused a great deal of consternation up here. Him being a left-wing, almost communist. I mean, up here, they don't count the votes for the Conservative Party, they just weigh them. Anyway, we turn right at this point and just make our way down here to a stile. Over this stile, onto the road, turn right. So down in this dip, up to the side to that farm there, Scargill Farm, take a left, up onto the moor. Oh, suddenly it's very windy. And we're on the top, and go through this little gate here, and up that lane onto the moor. Here we are at the top, the wind, you can see for miles. the Stang Forest road that leads over into Swaledale. Just come past these sheep sorting arrangement and go through this gate into this large open pasture. Continue down here till we get to Scargill Beck, which eventually leads down into the River Greta later. This is the land of curlews, peewits, oyster catchers, bed of pivets, occasional cuckoo, and every now and then golden plover. I've just seen a lot of curlews down there by that gate, which I'm going to go through in a minute. Well, as soon as they've seen me, they've taken off. So I'll come down the lane to this gate, through this gate, and then straight down across that field in front of me. Just over this bank in front of me is Scargill Beck. It's a big gravel bed there when the river's low. And invariably you get an oyster catching nest when you get this time of year. If it sees you before you see it, it scuttles off. And the nest is extremely difficult to find. So you just have to slowly approach this edge and see it stand up and make off. And make a careful note of where that was. Well, that's the oyster catcher's nest on the gravel bank on Scargill Beck. It wasn't there every year, but most years it was there, but it's very difficult to see. Well, that big gravel bed has gone. It carried away in a flood. And there's a goose under. It's taken off. Turn left and we follow this all the way down to the River Greta. So this is the furthest point. We're now on the home run. Although it's quite a long way yet. It's 5 to 5. So it's taken us 5 hours to get here. Messing about. Well, I'll just go over this gate and carry on along this fence side. Yorkshire hinges. Oh, sorry, we're in Durham hinges. Just come along the fence line. Look at this little dodgy gate. These huge trees standing on the edge. Big fir tree is blown down. The size of that root mass. So, look at this rickety stile. I've crossed over it. It's not in the best of health, isn't this? And make my way down through the woods back down to the River Greta. This is normally a sea of blue. There's probably another couple of weeks before they're fully out. Because they're in the bottom of this valley. Whereas on the north side of the valley, which faces south, the bluebells will be out, and maybe we'll see them later on. Meander down, come to this little bridge. There are 4 of them. Use them at your own risk, it says. Just make my way across here. When I first came here, these bridges weren't here. You just had to paddle across the beck when it was up. You had no option but to turn around and go back. A wonderful display of marsh marigolds in the evening sunshine. And glorious. glossy yellow flowers. This great carpet of wood anemones. Fantastic. Well, back down at the road, and this is the Gill Bridge, recently renovated. It's strange because this is the boundary between two parishes, and this road here on this side is called Chapel Lane. And when you get across the bridge it changes, it's called Cow Close Lane. The reason is that between here and Scargill, along there, which is not far, there used to be a chapel on the right hand side of the road. Only a tiny little bit of it remains. This is all that remains of Scargill Chapel, taken in 2009. I wonder how much of it's left now in 2022. You drive past it and wouldn't have a clue. Probably never even, you probably wouldn't even notice it. Well, across the bridge, to the left, where this finger post, and make my way down through Hardy Wife Wood. You wonder how they make these names up, wouldn't you? Here we come to another little bridge. They do make it an awful lot easier than it used to be. Wonderful sunshine, the shadows getting longer as the sun goes down. And here's the second of the bridges in Hardy Wife Wood. And after the third bridge we begin to climb away from the beck. Up this incline, there's something over there I've never noticed before. A white stone. I don't know what it is. A boundary marker perhaps. And these massive ancient beech trees. Lost its top all over the path, but you can get through. Well, just come around the corner, we come to this signpost here. And I want to take this one. Which takes me down there. But before I do, just a little diversion along here, and I'll come back to it. There's a lovely view along here. And I'm standing on top of Black Scar. It just drops off there, that cliff, down to the river, a long way down there. And there you can see the River Greta. Making its way down to the River Tees in this lovely evening sunshine. It's a lovely view. Even better if those two trees were stuck in front of you. Well, after my 20-minute diversion, I make my way down here to the river through these magnificent trees. It's a beautiful light shining through the fresh foliage on these beech trees. Sound of the river, whisper of the wind in the branches. At the bottom of the path, these stepping stones over Scargill Beck. When it comes down and meets there the River Greta. You can see the power of the water when this thing is in flood. Taking 7 bells out of these big lumps of concrete. And from here on in, it's up, back up to the top of the valley. Last climb, in fact. None of them are very strenuous, you know. Just coming along the footpath, and in front of me is this lovely slow worm, a legless lizard. It looks like a snake, but it likes the warmth of my hand. So, you see it flicking its tongue out, looking at the camera. Tasting the air, wondering what's going on. Yeah, lovely thing, I've seen one for ages. Anyway, let's put it down and watch it sneak away. I wonder how they do it. Looks like a shiny stick. Anyway, we'll leave it to get on with its business. All the evening sun is shining through these silver birches. Their white bark, green grass fleckled with the occasional bluebell. Well, as you meander along the side of the wood, eventually this little pond comes into this little tarn. There used to be a big colony of black-headed gulls on here, but very occasionally it dries up and predators can get to the nest, particularly things like foxes. But today it just looks like grey-legged geese. I think they're grey-legged geese. I could be wrong, but they're certainly not Canada geese. Here we have a wonderful display of bluebells just before we go out into the field. Lovely. Great sway of them in the sunshine. Oh, we've emerged into this field here. There's a great big bull there. There's cows and calves. And I just follow this fence round. This is one of these fields, if you're walking a dog, you don't want to be coming through here with a dog. Because whilst these cows are very wary of me, if you've got a dog with you, they'll attack you normally. Protect the calf. Well, I've come to the gate at the end of the field. Seems like somebody's lost their car keys. They're hanging on a nail here. Oh, I bet when they got back to the car, I wonder what they did. Howdy. And if you want your car keys, so here. This is it. Crook's house. So this is Crook's house, farmhouse. And the next bit of the journey is quite simply to follow their road out onto the public road and then go down that for a little while before diving back into the woods. Well, you see how high we are. You see for miles over there. I see giraffe everywhere. Well, I've arrived at Wilson House, and they do holiday accommodation as well. And I understand, according to their website, they've recently added a fishing lake. I've come to the end of the lane and about to join the road where there is this finger post. 2 3/4 miles to Brignal Mill. It seemed an awful lot further than that to me. Anyway, I just follow the road along here for about 1/4 mile before going back into the wood for the last stage of this lovely walk. I've been walking down the road for about 10 minutes. And on the left hand side you come to this gate and this finger post, and where it says public footpath, Greta Bridge, 1/2 mile, that's the last stint. Well, I've come into the wood and the road Greta's a long way down there. This is called Hell's Cauldron, this part of the river. And you can see it just drops off over a cliff. Now you get a better view of it. Well, it's in the shade now with the sun being almost setting behind the clouds over there. Well, I just come down through the wood and now I'm just about river level and approaching this little gate. I just go through the little gate, follow that footpath down there across the fields to those buildings in the distance. Well, go through this little gate, down between the buildings and turn left. Oh, lovely blossom. See, this used to be a coaching inn, you can see there. The doors for where the coaches were. Changed the horses before they set out over Stainmoor. Well, having come over Stainmoor, they changed the horses before going on to Scotch Corner. And there is Greta Bridge, the other side of which is my car. Well, I'm back at the car. It's 8:15. So it's 8.5 hours, about 12 miles. I just donner away, stop when you want. Take as much time as you like. It's been a wonderful afternoon, and finish with this blackbird off. I think it's a blackbird. There's blackbird singing behind me and Molly's arms in the background. Anyways, W.H. Davies said in his poem Leisure, which he wrote in 1911, with which you will be familiar, "What is this life so full of care? We have no time to stand and stare, no time to stand beneath the boughs and stare as long as sheep or cows, no time to see when woods we pass, where squirrels hide their nuts in grass." Oh, lovely poem that. It goes on, there's another 3 verses to it, but that'll do. Anyway, we'll see you again. Take care. Bye-bye. Oh, I forgot to add. In all those 9 hours, I never saw another person, not one.